Welcome to Short and to the Point, a podcast from the Comeback in Awful Announcing. Here's your host, Jessica Kleinschmidt.
Welcome back to Short and to the Point here on the Comeback in Awful Announcing. Jessica Kleinschmidt here. Really excited for today's guest. Jake Zivin of MLS Season Pass and Apple TV joins me today. There goes my coffee. My coffee is ready for me to go as well. But you guys, I learned so much today. Soccer, of course, is taking the world over. And I feel like every single sport needs a Jake Zivin in their corner, not only as a broadcaster, but just somebody who loves the game so much. And when you listen to him talk about soccer, it's obvious his love for the game is certainly there. And it's not only that, but it's infectious as well. So I don't have a huge background in this sport, but he makes me want to fall in love with it. He also gets to share a booth with Taylor Twellman, who, if you're a casual soccer fan, you've heard of him. You know how much energy he brings to the broadcast. So imagining these two sharing a booth together is just fantastic. And not only that, but they're calling Messi matches, which is great to hear as well. You know, a guy who's not only coming to the States, but creating history and continuing history. And Zivin and Twellman get to be a part of that. So imagine those two together calling a match like that. So without further ado, here is my chat with Jake. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Jake, welcome to the show. So excited to have you on. You know, I heard you recently talk about your love of the sport and how you and your broadcast partner, Taylor Twellman, truly love soccer. And I can hear that in your calls. But I did some research. You've loved soccer from the beginning, and being from the States where baseball's a thing, football's a thing, of course, basketball, you loved MLS. Tell me about that love that you had for soccer.
Yeah. So I grew up in Evanston, Illinois, and I'm of the generation where when you turn 5 years old, you enter kindergarten, first grade, you start playing AYSO, right? Rec league soccer. And for me, soccer was my favorite sport. We played soccer, baseball, basketball, football. I loved the Cubs. I loved the Bears. I loved the Bulls, but soccer was my favorite sport. So when MLS started, I was 10. I was all in, really excited. And then the Chicago Fire came into the league when I was 12. And now I had a team of my own in my city, just like I had the Chicago Bears, just like I had the Chicago Cubs and the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan at the time. But I had a soccer team that was mine, that was Chicago's. And so growing up, I was a diehard Chicago Fire fan. Love the sport, obviously, U.S. national team as well, right? Just soccer in this country. I wasn't one that could attach myself to a team from Europe. And I think that's like a Chicago thing, right? Like the Cubs were terrible when I grew up, but nobody was a Yankees fan or a Braves fan. You were a Cubs fan. The Bears have been terrible for the most part my whole life, aside from when I was 6 months old and they won the Super Bowl. But I wasn't going to be a Cowboys fan or a 49ers fan. I'm from Chicago. I'm a Bears fan. So for me, that same civic pride went to soccer. So it was always the Fire for me. And then MLS, right? As I got older and I interned for the league and, started to work more generally around the country, it became, I think more about the Major League Soccer and feeling both professionally and personally really invested in the league and the success of the league. And here we are now, man. I'm living my dream. I've been living my dream for a while now. It's pretty cool.
You say you're living your dream. Do you take a step back and realize that because, working in broadcasting, it's every day, it's a new match, it's a new game. Do you take a step back and say, okay, I'm doing it. Like, let me kind of embrace it and smell the roses a little bit?
Yeah, it like you said, it can be hard to do that in the moment, right? And we're on this ridiculous stretch right now. I think it'll be 8 games in 16 days for me, for Taylor Twellman and I, and me. And so during this time, despite calling Messi's debut and Messi's second game and the All-Star game and the skills challenge, it can be tough to have that time to step back and reflect because you're just on to the next game. Call a game, travel, call a game, travel, prep, obviously in there, which can be intensive, especially if it's teams that you haven't called before. So you haven't prepped them, you're kind of prepping from scratch, so to speak. You're aware of the team, but it's just getting everything down in front of you, right? It takes just a little more time to kind of physically do all that. So I would say not really now, but look, there's no doubt that over the past 8 years now that I've been kind of full time in Major League Soccer. All the time, I reflect about how lucky I feel, how fortunate I feel to be doing what. Honestly, I would have told you when I was 20 years ago, I would have told you this would have been what I want to do, my ideal job. And to be doing that is remarkable. I feel really fortunate and really lucky.
You kind of mentioned him in Taylor We Trust with Taylor Twellman. I've heard you say it before, and I've met him before, and it's really interesting. His energy is just dynamic and it's intoxicating. What's it like sharing a broadcast with him and really just developing the chemistry, not just with him, but any broadcast partner that you have to sit next to?
You said you met him before, but before we came on the air, you said you had forgot that you met him before, which is amazing. I hope Taylor is listening to this. Clip this on Twitter. That is fantastic. No. Taylor's amazing. He's great. Like you said, his energy, you see, everybody sees his energy on camera, and he's famous for that, and certainly went viral in 2018 for that. Mm-hmm. He's similar, like off camera, right? Like that's Taylor. That's kind of how he lives life. And it's been wonderful to get to know him, to hang out with him, to become friends, right? And like you said, you have to build chemistry. That's not, it always can be a little more natural with some people than others. And I actually think Taylor and I meshed pretty well together early on, and we knew each other, through the MLS circles. Obviously he'd come out and do a lot of Portland games. I was the TV voice of the Timbers. And so when him and John Champion or Adrian Healy for ESPN would come to a game, I would do that game on the radio, but we'd be at practice training together the day before. Right. So we knew each other, but it's been a blast. It's been a blast for these, it's only 5 or 6 months, 5 months. It feels longer. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in a positive way, right? I think it feels like we've been calling games together for longer than that. I've learned so much from him. He is somebody that really thinks hard about the entire broadcast, right? He's not one of the on-air people who's just like, I'm going to show up and I'm going to be my energetic and charismatic self, and then I'm going to go home, right? He is all in on every aspect of the broadcast. And I think he has wonderful broadcast instincts, both on air and off air. And we vibe and mesh on a lot of those. So it's, again, learned a lot from him on air and off air. And it's been a great time.
And tell me about that. It's interesting when you're talking about all aspects. This isn't just about Twellman, but right. I heard, when it comes to stats and advanced analytics, that's certainly there, but you can't deny the eye test, and you have to embrace all of those. Broadcasts are different too. You have to combine that. You have to put on a show. You have to educate people. You have to entertain people. Have you been able to find that balance? Was it ever a tough task for you, or did you feel like it was more natural for you to kind of balance all of those out?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm definitely, I think, more of like the serious, not serious broadcaster, but like not one that engages in a ton of banter or joking. So for me, like you said, with the balance of entertaining and informing and just presenting, right, what we're seeing in front of us, that kind of having fun in this, like a joking, bantering way has always been something that I think is I have to push myself to do a little bit. Now, you don't want to go too far to that way, right? Because then the broadcast becomes like a joke. So I'm definitely more instinctually the kind of old school, traditional, call the game, bring the energy that matches the game, I would say is what I think my style is. And so, yeah, so it's been for me, I think, trying to kind of push a little bit towards that way. Taylor's amazing at that. And that's where when you get the chemistry and 5 months in of calling games with somebody, now we have a little more fun together. Not that we didn't have fun early on, but now, we can joke and banter and have inside jokes, not super inside that the viewers would be disenfranchised, but, more than we could have 4 months ago, because now we know each other. We've been traveling together for 5 months.
And, you kind of just said it, right? You don't want to go too far jokingly. You don't want to not go too far. You want to be entertaining. So you kind of just solidified, like, it's a difficult task, but you have to kind of wrap it all up and put it in a package. And it's just interesting to think about, because I think people will view it, and I'm not comparing you to Stephen A. Smith, but there's a lot of those people that are sitting on the couch saying, I could do that. And it really takes a lot of different levels and balances. Yeah,
I would agree with that, right? It's easy to go too far one way or the other, right? It's easy to, have people tune off and tune out and turn people off, right? If you're too jokey and you're not focusing on the game. but there's also the balance of entertaining and entertaining kind of the casual person, right? So yeah, I think it is about kind of finding that really fine balance, and hopefully we do. So soccer can be trickier as well because you don't have stoppages. Unlike baseball,
Yeah.
baseball is a storyteller's medium, right?
Yeah.
It's there's a pitch and then now it's quicker, of course, right? But especially before the pitch clock, there's a pitch, then there might be 30, 45 seconds and you can joke and you can tell stories, serious stories or funny stories, whatever. And then there's a pitch, right? And then as it gets later on in the game and the moments are more tense, you go that way. Soccer, the ball's really never out of play. So you have to always, one, be careful, because if you go too far down into a story or too far into joking, well, there could be a goal scored in 2 seconds. And two, there is always kind of action happening that you need to focus on. So I think soccer can be trickier than some other sports. And certainly baseball and soccer are kind of the two extremes as far as how much the ball, the puck, whatever is in play.
Yeah, definitely. And, when it comes to some of these analytics and these graphics, Apple broadcasts are certainly adopting some of these things. I know you're being a part of those now. You complimented some of the production and everything that goes into these broadcasts. How can soccer benefit from these things? Was it something that you were looking forward to embracing? Because it feels like you're really up for it.
Absolutely. Look, I think that advanced analytics in soccer has a long way to go, and it's whereas baseball, and I loved what Apple did and is doing with their Friday Night Baseball graphics package, with the going super deep into the situational percentages and all of that. And baseball is the perfect sport, right, for advanced analytics. Like, there is 100+ years of data. There are so many distinct moments in a game that you can describe that repeat themselves over the course of 100 years. Runners on first and third, 2 outs, right-handed pitcher, left-handed batter, whatever, all of that stuff. Soccer is the opposite. It is art. It is free flowing. There are, almost no similar distinct situations like that, like discrete situations like that you can use for advanced analytics. So there are ways to do it. I do tend to think that in soccer, it can get, if you get too far into it, it can be a little too much in the nitty gritty. And I think some of the beauty of the game, and what a lot of people love about the game, is its free flowing nature, and it's this kind of abstract nature of the game, and the brilliance, the creative brilliance that is needed to succeed in soccer. That being said, yeah, I think we're, embracing certainly some of that. You'll see some different graphics at halftime specifically that you wouldn't have seen before. We have access to some kind of different data that maybe we, didn't have before. And I'm all for that, and continue to do that on, as long as, in addition to kind of pushing everything forward in the production that I think we're trying to do, and that everybody at Apple and with MLS Season Pass are trying to do.
And maybe those who are intimidated by some of those numerics or analytics, I feel like for you, it's still important to stay true to that art and the free flowingness of the game. And has that been your constant since the beginning? Because every sport's changed, soccer especially, I feel like on a global level, definitely, but you're still staying true to the actual game itself.
Yeah, of course. Right. I think you have to, it can be tough. Soccer is a sport that has supporters with very strong opinions and very entrenched opinions about how the game should be presented and how the game should be talked about, and at times how the game should be played. Right. And so, and look, every sport is like this. But soccer, especially in this country, I think specifically, right, so it can be hard to kind of buck that trend and to push things forward in that way. Right. And if we start to do kind of a stats cast completely, that there would probably be a lot of people that would not love it. But, yeah, so I think there's always balancing that, right? Balancing kind of trying to push things forward. And for me, for using any stat, any advanced analytics, I was a math major in college, so
Okay.
I nerd out for that kind of stuff.
Right.
But I think it's got to be something that the average viewer can understand and can be accessible to them. Because if we start getting into all of this stuff, people are tuning out, right? Even if it's something that my, fellow stat nerds that I went to college with, that they're excited about and can understand, it doesn't mean that everybody wants to be hearing that the whole time. So I think it's about finding ways to put them into context that helps inform and educate, and bring some value to the broadcast without just throwing a ton of numbers at everybody and hoping they understand what we're talking about.
And when you said so yourself, you're on a broadcast of a sport that people are very opinionated on. Did you experience that early on? Are you one to, I know hopefully you don't read comments, but when you have exposure to some of these things on Twitter, what have you, do you take those with a grain of salt? What was that like compared to maybe in the infancy of your career?
We have to. All of us in this business have to, right? I think for our own mental health. That is one of the biggest challenges of being in a front-facing role, and it comes with it. It comes with the territory. I understand it, but I try not to read the comments, try not to read mentions, right? But stuff will come across. Of course, there's certainly a lot more now than there were. I feel extremely fortunate to have been and feel very supported by the people of Portland and the Portland Timbers supporters over the years. And whether right away, they did or not, I think that they did early on. I was following up essentially, a year or two removed from John Strong, who is a good friend of mine and who is, the top of American soccer broadcasting and has been for a decade. He was the Timbers' first MLS play-by-play person and then moved on to NBC Sports first and now Fox Sports, where he's been for a long time. So those are really big shoes to fill in Portland. And especially, over the years, I feel an incredible amount of support from just the general Portland Timbers fan base. And that's great because, all of us are human beings, right? So when you have negative comments and negative mentions, it's hard. It's really hard, right? And you just have to remind yourself it's part of the role. It's part of the job. Just like as an athlete, right? Who are getting people saying far worse and far more things than to us. Now there's certainly more people that had not heard me before that probably still have no idea who I am that are listening to me. So, they have their opinions, and you try not to read the comments, you try not to read the mentions, and you try to focus on doing your job as best as you can and listening to feedback from the people that, I don't want to say the people that matter, because ultimately the viewers do matter quite a bit.
Right.
But you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Nobody's going to love you. So just focus on doing the job the best you can.
Definitely. Man in the arena is what a lot of the athletes tell me quite often.
Yeah.
And,
exactly.
Watching some of these international superstars, it's really cool to see you go regional to a broader audience. And it's been pretty epic to watch some of these international superstars coming over to the States. Messi's arrival, of course, was no different. And being on the call for a superstar like that, being able to hear you and Twellman just go off was just a beautiful sound. What's that like to not only broadcast a match when it comes to Messi, but is there a different preparation when it comes to a superstar like that?
Yeah, it's interesting. First of all, it's a lot of pressure. There's no doubt about it, because we know that there's going to be people watching, not just in the United States now, because with Apple TV, with MLS Season Pass, we are the voice of record in the English language in 107 countries across the globe. 107 countries that have different cultures, different way. And I mean, broadcasting cultures, obviously cultures as well, but different television cultures, broadcasting cultures, different styles of calling the game. And we are doing our style here for everybody, right? So there's a lot of pressure there, and you hope that you don't mess up the moment more than anything. I knew going into that first game, if he scores any goal, it's a big moment. If he scores a great goal, it's a really big moment. I try not to think too much about that because, you don't want to be overwhelmed. Don't want to overwhelm yourself, and certainly don't want pressure to get to you. The prep, I think, a little different because I said this before to somebody the other day. I'll compare it to, I create a player card for every player in every game that has all their bio information and their stats. And, I'll tell stories right? I'll tell them during the game or bring some relevant stats in during the game. And I compare it to in local news. I worked in local news for 8 years. You put a graphic on the screen identifying the speaker for everybody but the president of the United States. You don't font the president. That was the rule, because everybody knows who the president is. You don't need to put the president's name on the screen. Well, I feel like with Messi, it's kind of similar. I don't need to give these stats in his bio during a game. He's Lionel Messi. He's the greatest player of all time. What do you say? Oh, he scored 33 goals in 2014 at Barcelona. Like, you don't need to say that. You know what I mean? So for me, the prep is less that and more, okay, how are we going to cover these moments? How are we going to contextualize what him now playing for Inter Miami, now playing in North America, eventually in Major League Soccer? Of course, this is Leagues Cup, a different competition. What that means for our country and our sport in our country, what that means for Inter Miami, what that means for Major League Soccer, what that means for him, for Lionel Messi himself. And then just hope you're kind of ready for the big moments. I'm not one who scripts out goal calls. I do not believe in that at all. I think you have to live in the moment. But on the other hand, you don't want to be caught off guard, right? So you want to make sure that you are ready when that moment comes.
When it comes to Messi, it's kind of cool because the bio and all that stuff's done for you in a way, because you don't have to present him, but you get to create history with him in a way. Do you understand like the magnitude of that?
I mean, I know it's his movie. He's creating it. We're just living in it, right? He's the main character. We're the very supporting roles, bit casts. But it's crazy, right? It is a little overwhelming, to be honest, to think that over 100 million people have viewed, or there's over 100 million views already on that goal, just from Major League Soccer's official channels of like Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Over 100 million all the way around the world, let alone secondary kind of edits and videos that are tweeted out. Yeah, that's a little overwhelming. It's amazing. It's an honor. It's remarkable to think, right, that like forever that's going to be the call, and that's going to be a moment that's played over and over again. I'm sorry for people that have to hear me yelling about Messi 100 million times.
And I was just going to tell you, I saw a YouTube video where somebody was dubbing Jurgen Twellman's call, and they were using it as it looked like a music video, but they were you and Twellman.
No, really? I saw somebody on Twitter tweeted something similar to.
I'll send you
that's
the link.
The world we're in. Send me the link. Oh, that's the world we're in now. It's great. I'm not one who got into this business because for fame, right, or anything like that, or because you want Twitter followers, or I love calling games. I always have since I grew up. Like calling, pretending to call our driveway basketball games, or you're playing video games and you're kind of doing the commentary over it. Like I was that kid doing all of that. And then at one point I realized, okay, this could be a job. People do get paid for this. And I just figured I'd try to go as far as I could. Didn't study it in college, but did it in college, Carleton College in Minnesota, which doesn't have a broadcasting program. I was a math major, was the voice of Carleton sports for 4 years. And I was like, I'm just going to go as far as I can, right? Keep it going as far as I can, because I love doing it. So to be able to still be doing it is all I need and all I want. But now that it's like, that call is going to live forever, that's crazy, right? Like it's a little overwhelming, to be honest.
It's overwhelming for me. Like I think it's great that you're doing it, but I mean, you said you don't script your goal calls. Why not? I feel like that's something that a lot of people dream about doing. Like, were you the kid holding your like toothpaste tube and like yelling goal in the mirror? Because I feel like even if you didn't cover soccer, like the kids would do that. Yeah,
no, definitely. I mean, like, yeah, absolutely. As a kid, right. I was like pretending that it was like I was calling a buzzer beater, right? Or late game winning goal at the death. I adamantly don't believe in scripting goal calls, because I think it's obvious when you do, to be honest. When I listen to games and I hear a call that I think is scripted, it's like, oh, that person was going to say it. And when you script it, you say it no matter what. And it might not be the appropriate. Like Messi's first goal could have happened in many different ways. It could have been a tap in. It could have been a deflection that bounced off somebody else and bounced off him and went in. It could have been a run through 6 defenders from midfield, a signature kind of messy, incredible goal where he dribbles past everybody and dribbles into the net. It could have been a set piece in the final minute, a free kick, as it was. All of those need to be called in different ways. And if you call them all the same way, the script that you had in your mind, it might not work. It might work if what you had in your mind is what happens. But if you call the tap in even if it's his first goal, even if it's that incredible moment. If you call the tap in the same way you call the direct free kick, it's to me that's you're not doing your job right. So no, I did I think a little bit of okay. And the one thing with direct free kick goals is like there's not a ton of ways to call them, right?
Right.
And they happen 25 yards out. So there is kind of a cadence to how to call them. Not how to call them, but how one would call them. Everybody will probably do it differently. So yeah, it's just for me it's about living in the moment for sure.
That's beautiful. And it's interesting because you were talking about like you were calling games in your driveway, all of these things. Were you like, I don't know if you ever watched One Tree Hill, but they had the guy who was he was calling games. He was that guy, his
Really?
best friend.
No, my wife did, so
NBA.
she'll understand this.
She'll totally understand. Ask her about the play-by-play guy who followed all of his jock friends around.
Oh, that's awesome. That was me.
Yeah,
that was
I was gonna say,
honestly, I got cut from the soccer team my sophomore year. All of my friends were on the team. Evanston, Illinois, great team. Went to the state championship game my senior year. So all of my friends are playing in the state championship game, and me and my twin brother, we were cut like our sophomore year. We're calling the games on local cable access TV.
Wow.
Like when we got cut, like junior year, senior year, we started calling the games of our buddies. Same thing with basketball. So that was me. Like that was me, literally me growing up.
Did you I think I heard you say you did the video game thing too. You would call video games?
Oh yeah, sure. I remember that distinctly, right? Like you're playing FIFA or you're playing NBA, whatever it was. Not NBA Jam. That's too much. That commentary is good enough. The NBA Jam doesn't need my commentary over.
You know your limits. Yeah.
Boom shakalaka, I know.
Yeah.
But no, but Madden, whatever it was, right? Calling those games, yeah, for sure. As I'm playing it, right? This is 13-year-old. Like, but I remember this well. As I'm playing it, like I'm doing the play-by-play along with it. Yeah, for sure.
That's great. Do you find yourself like, or I guess back in the day, would you do play-by-play, like go into the grocery store? Would you do
definitely
these types
not.
of things?
No,
Me neither. That would be weird, right?
Definitely not. It's about the sport. It's about the athletics. It's about the sports. It's about, because that's what I mean by, it's for me, it's not about like it's not about being a showman. And that's not against some people where it's kind of about the performance. For me, it's about the excitement of the moment and the energy of the moment. And we as play-by-play commentators get to be part of that, like in the moment. So for our job, we get to live in the elation, the excitement, sometimes the disappointment and the despair of that moment. Not at the same level as the athletes, not at the same level as the coaches and the staff and everybody who's grinding every day to make the team better and to get to Saturday night, for a soccer's perspective, Sunday, if you're talking about the NFL, right? But we do get to share that moment kind of with them, with the energy and the emotions of it. That's what I love about it more than anything. That's why to me, it's the job I always wanted to do and the job I feel so lucky to have.
And it's interesting, I've talked about your love of the game and I've talked to many broadcasters before. The love is there. Sometimes it's a different kind of love, but do you think that love will ever fade? And if it does, are you okay with having this as just a job?
Oh, I hope not. I hope it's never just a job. Yeah, no, I really hope not. It's not close to that now. I mean,
good.
I
can tell. Yeah.
I'll still look at Taylor after like shake. Oh my gosh, right? Like shake your head in disbelief, like when Messi scores that goal, or we called the game in front of 82,000 people at the Rose Bowl earlier this month. LAFC and there's big stars on those teams, but there's not a Beckham or a Messi playing in that game, and they sold out the Rose Bowl for 2 Major League Soccer club teams. That was and it was an incredible atmosphere and an incredible game. That was just awesome. I love that. So I hope it never becomes just a job. There are changes, right? When you work in this business, you're no longer a fan. I grew up a fan of the Chicago Fire, and then I worked for 8 years for the Portland Timbers. I'm not a fan of either the Chicago Fire or the Portland Timbers or any team in Major League Soccer. You have to detach yourself from the fandom, right? But I hope I never lose the love of the game and the moments and the emotion and the energy that we love so much.
And you were talking about some of these sold out matches, and it's quite remarkable because I know my background's in baseball and I have to convince people to go to games. What was the moment in your career where you're like, soccer's legit? People are actually paying attention to this sport.
Yeah. Oh man. So for me, 100%, it came in the Portland Timbers' first ever home game in Major League Soccer. So I said I was in local news in 2011. I was a sports anchor reporter for KEZI TV in Eugene, Oregon, the ABC station in Eugene. Great time, by the way, to be in Eugene. I was covering the Chip Kelly, the Michael James, Oregon Duck teams, Marcus Mariota teams. Awesome. But I loved MLS. I loved soccer. And so the Timbers are expansion team, 2011, getting ready for their first game. It's April, so it's not college football season. So we've got a little more leeway in the sports department. I convinced my news director. I was like, we got to send somebody up there. We go up to Portland Trailblazer playoff games. This is the second professional team in the state because the Portland Thorns hadn't come in yet. So we only have 2 professional sports teams in the state now. This is the second one. Like, we got to send somebody up there. And they're like, all right, you go up there by yourself, right? One-man band as it's known. So I drive up there. I've got my camera, tripod. I'm doing everything. I'm shooting the game. I'm going to edit it. I'm going to do a stand-up afterwards, the whole local news, thing. And I get into the stadium. This is me, who's a diehard MLS fan, who had interned for Major League Soccer in 2005, who had traveled around for a couple years on the production of the MLS Game of the Week on ESPN as the bug operator in the production truck, like operating the scoreboard on the screen, which is kind of the lowest rung on the broadcast, right? And I'd been to Spartan Stadium, where the Earthquakes used to play, to Robertson Stadium, where the Houston Dynamo used to play. These are college football stadiums. Rice Eccles, where Real Salt Lake used to play, another college football stadium, right?
Wow.
And I walk into Providence Park, and there's 20,000 people, and they are all going nuts. They are all on their feet. They are all into it in pouring rain. From the opening whistle, they're all singing. It was an incredible atmosphere, something that I had never seen before in American soccer. And I'm sitting there, and I text my old boss at Major League Soccer, and I'm like, I have goosebumps. This is like, the whole stadium is like a supporter group for, the Chicago Fire or DC United. So back then, MLS teams each team would have like a supporter group that was really into it, and it'd be a section or two behind the goal. And the rest of the stadium, they were there. They were into the game, but it wasn't the fervor that you see now when you watch MLS games in a lot of places. And when you look at kind of the marketing images that MLS puts out of these incredible environments and these sold out stadiums. And Portland was it. And I was like, this is goosebumps, because I didn't think that it'd be possible in America for that to happen for an MLS team so quick. You thought it would take 10, 20, 30 years from just when I was kind of around it a lot, 2005, 2006, like the David Beckham, when he came in, that era, to get to there. But we got there quick, and Portland wasn't necessarily the first. Seattle, before Portland, had a wonderful atmosphere and relevant in their city. Toronto FC was probably the first to have a more European feel in the stadium, to have that supporter culture, intense culture, and again, to feel relevant in the city. But all of a sudden, 2011, you have the Timbers coming in. Now you've got 2 or 3 teams that are really relevant in their cities. And that was the first time I saw it in person. And to me, it was remarkable. And to now be at the point in 2023 where there are many teams and many markets across Major League Soccer where the stadiums are like that. They're sold out. They are into it. It's incredible theater with singing and chanting and flags and everything. And more importantly, the teams are relevant in their markets. It's still mind-boggling to me that we've gotten to this point from where we were, and it's only going up, and it's incredible. And I'm hope I can stay on the ride with the league as it goes forward.
Definitely. And I love that you're able to see this love get bigger as opposed to like your love of it change. I think that's really great. And, it's kind of a messy question, but it's relevant to seeing soccer come over here. When it comes to these younger players, perhaps they'll be streamlined to come over to the States a little bit quicker. Seeing Messi come over here, is that something that Messi can really change in regard to that, bringing more of the players over to the States?
I think so. I think we will see a change. How Is it going to be obvious, right? Like, I'm not sure, but I think we'll look back on it and realize, obviously in the moment, I mean, right, with each signing, are we going to say that's because of Messi? That's because of Messi? Maybe not, but holistically, when we look back on it, I think we're going to say, okay, there were these players that maybe wouldn't have come to MLS. Maybe they would have made the move from their club in Argentina or in Brazil or Colombia or wherever it is as 20, 21 years old. They would jump straight to Europe, or maybe they'd go to Liga MX and then try to go to Europe. And instead, because Messi is in MLS, that slightly higher caliber of player, then is because MLS is already getting those players. And that's changed the league big time. It's slightly higher caliber of player is now going to choose MLS. I mean, Inter Miami is going to be a great example of it. They've already signed Diego Gomez, a 20-year-old Paraguayan midfielder who hasn't debuted yet. They're going to sign 2 others in that kind of profile. MLS has a rule, the under 22 initiative rule, where you can sign players under the age of 22 and the transfer fee doesn't count towards the salary cap. Getting really into the MLS weeds there. Mm-hmm. But you basically have these 3 spots for really good under 22 players from abroad. And Miami has them all open. They've already signed one of them. They're going to use the other 2. The level of player that they're going to get in those 3 spots is far higher than it would have been 2 months ago before Messi came, because people are going to want to come and play with Messi. And I think, around the league, you'll open up eyes, and it could go the other way too. You could have players at a higher level in their prime from Europe or wherever they're playing, South America, that will choose to come to MLS. It'll become a league of choice because Messi, they see what Messi's doing and they see him here. So I do think there's going to be a tangible effect on the quality of play across the league because Messi's here. And it's already, I should say, it is already a league where the quality of play has been on an incredible upward trend over especially the past 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, it's just that's the coolest thing to me, like to have one player. I mean, obviously there's multiple players that are making an impact, but for him to, wow, it blows my mind. It's so cool. Jake, you've been literally phenomenal. And I know soccer is very, very popular. I know you only make it better, and they are very lucky to have you. And I so appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jessica. Anytime. It was great to chat.
You as well. That was Jake Zivin of MLS Season Pass and Apple TV. Please follow all of his stuff. I have become such a new fan of his work, and I told you guys you would love it. I learned a lot, and I hope you did too. Thanks for tuning in to Short and to the Point here on the Comeback and Awful Announcing. Thanks to producer Philip, who has had to deal with a lot of takes from me today. So I appreciate him and all of his hard work. Make sure you're liking and subscribing to our YouTube page on the Comeback TCB, and we'll see you next time.
Want even more short and to the point? Follow Jessica at Kleinschmidt JD and head over to thecomeback.com and awfulannouncing.com.